This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. And as we say, we broadcast from beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona, where it's either heaven or hell. And it's really right now perfectly heaven. It's fantastic. But anyway, we have a fantastic program for you today. My co-author and I came up with this book here called Who Stole My Pension? And it's one of the most disturbing and gut-wrenching books you can read, especially for the old guys like me who are baby boomers. You know, they worked all their lives, and they're going to find out that somebody walked off with their pensions. So it's going to be a very important book, and if you think there's an economic crisis coming up, it's really the pension crisis. Because ever since around 2008, when they started dropping interest rates, pensions have not performed. And so this massive shortfall, plus we have toxic assets, fake assets being pumped into them by Wall Street. And then there's looting and incompetence. So other than that, there's no happy ending to this story. So we have two guests today. We have, of course, my co-author here, great guy, Edward Ted Siddell. He's a former United States Securities Exchange Commission attorney, and he is the expert on pension looting. He's helped himself he's the biggest whistleblower going because he knows how they steal. So that's why this book is important for any of you who want to know, should you get out of your pension now before it's all gone? Any comments, Kim?
Well, here's what I'm learning, and thanks to Ted for this, is that pensions touch every single segment of the business world. It doesn't seem to be any one segment that's protected. And our other guest is Pete Antico. Did I pronounce that correctly? Pete Antico. He's an actor, stuntman, and macroeconomic scholar, and he's the Hollywood guy and talking about Hollywood pensions and what's happening there. So it's going to be a fascinating show, and I'm always ears wide open, Ted, because you always are a wealth of information. So welcome both to the show. And
the reason Pete's interesting here because, you don't feel too much sorrow when the Teamsters lose the truck drivers lose their pensions. But when the sexy and the rich in Hollywood lose their money, that's more exciting. So we're not going to name names, but we're going to find out that a lot of these, the beautiful people of Hollywood and the music industry, how much trouble they're in right now. So anyway, welcome to the program, Ted and Pete.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for being here. Keying on the Hollywood pensions are very interesting because most people in the world, or in the world or the United States, believe that if you're in Hollywood or you're an actor, you automatically make millions of dollars. And our union has about 160,000 members. Half of those, close to half of those members make zero. They make no money. I call it vanity card holders. They get into the union or Taft-Hartley, and they never work. The people that actually earn their living, maybe there's 80,000, 80 or maybe closer to 70 to 80,000 people actually make money. But I think out of that, only maybe 15% to 20% actually earn a living solely from being an actor or a stuntman or from working on contracts. So the pensions have been around, for a long time to protect the actors, and they actually went on strike in the time of the 60s to actually, gain a pension from the AMPTP, which is the producers, our employers. And lately, it's been interesting because we have a multi employer benefit plan, and it's not like a defined benefit plan, which you both know extremely well. So it's interesting that in the biggest bull market in the history of the country, even from the Great Recession from 2009 to 2020, the beginning. When the stock market was up about 300%, and yet our pension plans funding ratios went down 1.5 to 2% a year. Albeit 2019, it was only 0.5% we went down, I remember when they came in and said, oh, we have the Pension Protection Act that allows you to smooth your liabilities out over 10 years, because the pension was considered, in the yellow zone or starting to be underfunded under 80%. And when it went down to 76 and a quarter, which it is now, they said automatically it's in the green zone. And I said, well, how is that? With a stroke of a pen with a law? You're trying to tell me that that magically gave you more money, or to fund your plan with a stroke of a pen, because you allowed people to call yourself in the green zone with no extra finance to back it up? So these things that they tell people are a bit fraudulent and duplicitous, in my humble opinion. I'd love to know your opinion on it.
So anyway, Ted, it's really been great working with this book. This book came out in January 2020, and all hell broke loose. But could you give a little bit about your background and how you became a whistleblower, so that you're not in any financial trouble? That's good. Anyway, what's your background?
Well, my background, Robert, is I was an attorney with the Securities and Exchange Commission in Washington, where I focused straight out of law school on regulating the money management industry, the investment management industry, and particularly looking at how pensions and retirement plans are managed by Wall Street. And so I did over $1 trillion in forensic investigations of retirement plans, and for some of the largest pensions in the country, the state of Rhode Island, the state of North Carolina, and the New York State Teamsters. And what I found in my forensic investigations was that Wall Street, no surprise, was looting pension plans, and in so doing was looting workers, really, of their retirement security. So I started reporting some of these things to the government, to the SEC, giving them my investigations. And then in 2017, I was awarded the largest whistleblower award from the commodities regulators, the CFTC, which was $30 million. And then the following year was awarded the largest SEC award, which was $48 million, for things I had discovered in my investigations.
So right now, we'll get back into what you found out, but is one of the reasons you're talking to Pete Antico, are you looking into the Screen Actors, the SAG, Screen Actors Guild, and what's going on in Hollywood's pensions? Is that what you're doing?
Well, I certainly am. And Pete actually, I believe, will tell you, reason he contacted me is because he bought the book. He read the book and was impressed with it. And he's a big follower of yours, Robert, but even before
smart guy.
Is that correct? Right, Pete?
Yes.
And so we started talking about pension issues. I mean, the subtitle or the byline to Who Stole My Pension is, how can you stop the looting? So Pete and I think a lot of actors in Hollywood are aware that their pension is not giving them the kind of retirement security they had hoped for or had been promised. They're seeing problems. They're seeing underperformance of the investments, toxic investments, hedge funds, all kinds of private equity, crazy deals. And so that's what I think what drew him to the book and what caused him to contact me.
And Pete, you're saying that the SAG pensions Screen Actors Guild pensions are underfunded by 80%?
No, I'm saying that the normal pension funding, according to the ERISA law, would be 80% and above would be in the green zone. The pension's fine.
I see. Okay.
And normally under 70 to 80% is in the yellow zone, and under 70% would be critical. So ours is at 76 and a quarter. Now our union and
I'd say, Pete, yours is at 76 and a quarter if you believe the numbers.
Yeah.
What do you believe the numbers to be, Ted?
Well, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical, and from looking at the finance, it's been embezzled several times, and
what I'm talking about is the alternative investments, which are things other than stocks or bonds, are what are considered hard to value assets that are extremely easy to inflate the value because nobody really knows what they're worth. So those are often inflated, and that's why I say if you believe that a pension that has a lot of hard to value assets is as rich as it says it is, I wouldn't count on it. It probably isn't. Some of the hard to value assets are probably inflated.
Yeah.
The thing
I
that
always-
what Ted was, when I met Ted, when we started working on this project a couple of years ago, is you were saying that because the interest rates were going down, this is called the inverted yield curve.
Sure.
You know, that they were so at one time when I was in school, just coming out of school, it was like 15% interest. And then 81, the bond yields went down. And as the bond yields went down, these pensions couldn't guarantee or get the 7% return. And so so in 2008, when they dropped interest rates even further, they couldn't get the returns to get the 7%. So they started going further out into higher risk, more spooky, dubious, quote unquote, assets. And so what Ted says is that the number one export of America are toxic assets. We ship them all over the world. That was a subprime crash and all this. But now the pensions are going to crash because America, or i.e. Wall Street and the Treasury, has shipped toxic assets to pension plans and governments all over the world. Is that correct, Ted?
Yeah, America is, and has, for decades, for over a century, been the premier financial innovator. That's what we do in this. We're a vibrant capitalist country, and our laws and our financial system encourage innovation, and with innovation comes scamming and creating toxic, opaque, hard to understand, hard to value assets. We create them in America. They're made in America, and then we ship them abroad. And now, as we wrote in the book, Japan is just starting to load up on these hedge funds, private equity funds. Australia is. So these are all toxic, made in America investments that have failed American pensions over the last 10 years. So now it's time to ship them abroad.
But wasn't that similar to what happened in the subprime market crash? Is that they were buying these CMBSs and CDS, credit default swaps and all this. Those were exotic derivatives that Buffett called weapons of mass financial destruction.
How about mortgage debt obligations? The same thing. Yeah.
And so they're still exporting them.
Yep, and there's a lot of so-called collateral behind mortgage-backed securities and other securitized assets. And there's a question, does the person who packaged these loans, these assets, and sold them in the market, do they even own them? What we found in 08 was that in many cases they didn't own the mortgages and that they packaged and sold,
But tell me how they did this. So in 2008, they were mandating they have to bail out the toxic mortgage-backed securities. So they go to Congress, they vote on that, all of a sudden Paulson, the ex-Goldman Sachs CEO, that runs an end around and all of a sudden bails out AIG at 100 cents on the dollar. Why? Because they had $12.9 billion worth of credit default swaps with AIG, and if they go bankrupt, Goldman goes bankrupt. So, and everybody sits there and goes, that's okay. And I wanted to know how Paulson could run an end around if Congress voted on it. That's the legislative branch. The only branch that is able to coin money is the legislative branch, is the Congress. So how did Paulson run an end around? Seems like a bit of an inside game. A lot of this stuff seems, like
he was CEO of Goldman, and he was Secretary of Treasury. And the other thing what I thought was always interesting, after talking to Ted, he called it TARP, Troubled Asset Recovery Plan. It was really Toxic Asset Recovery Plan. It was to protect Goldman.
Of course. Richard Russell used to say that we exported inflation to the other companies. We give our inflated dollars because we're the world's reserve currency. So America, for instance, inflated dollars, they give them to China, but China is very smart. What they do is they take the money and they're buying all the intrinsic value, all the gold and silver mines and commodities in Africa. So they're buying it up with our dollars. So they have infrastructure, which is actually quite smart.
Well, they have Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton as partners. I mean, it's easy to do if you have those kinds of partners, right? Right, Ted?
Yeah.
So getting back to Hollywood, what's happening in Hollywood? What's happening, Ted?
Well,
they stopped everyone from working, obviously. So then no one has worked for 6 months. They're just getting back to work in the last 3 weeks, or really. So obviously things are hurting because people have to make money to get contributions into your pension plan, and that's not happening. We make money on residuals, so our contracts requires if you work on certain contracts, you get residual income. But respectfully, the evidence shows that our contracts have been negotiated and given away since 2011, and our negotiators, in my opinion, should be fired.
So Ted, have you begun your investigation?
Yeah, I've been working with Pete on some other things that we can't talk about. But one of the things that I think would be really interesting if Pete would tell us, what is your average stuntman or Hollywood person get as a pension when they retire? What kind of a retirement income?
Now, this is like a two-pronged question. If they have, like, if you do, like, I've been doing this 41 years, and if you believe it or not, I don't qualify for a full pension until I'm 65 years old, even though I've worked for 41 years. And if I was in New York and I worked as a policeman in a fire, I'd get 2 pensions, one at 20 years. Most our staff, for instance, they get a full pension after 20 years of service, and they get double our pension. Their pension caps are 215,000. Performers caps are 96,000. And if you retire at 55, they take you get a 30% hit for that, less than that. So it's pretty unconscionable that an employee can work 20 years, and they also get the best consecutive 5 years of their earnings, which are normally their last 5 years. So, there's things that are potential, like pension spiking and getting raises the last 5 years. If I could take the best 5 years consecutive of my pension, I'd be getting well over $100,000 a year for my pension. And many of the people that I know that have been successful would get that. So in about 2003, 2004, there was something that they did, and I call it self-healing. The staff, the management side, and the actor side of our pension gave the staff those much higher rates. And
when you say staff, Pete, what do you mean by staff?
Sorry, the staff of SAG-AFTRA, the employees of SAG-AFTRA, okay, and the employees of the pension plan, they voted themselves up over double our pension. And then in 2008, when the financial crisis happened, our accrual rate in our pension was 3.5%. But they brought the actors and performers down to 2%, and they left the staff at 3.5%. Now, that's self-healing all the way around. Our staff should have this.
Let's just net it out. The foxes that were guarding the hen house were taking all the eggs.
Our pension should be equal with staff.
Yeah. Okay. We got the picture here. So anyway, when we come back, we'll be discussing more, about this pension crisis, because when this pension thing breaks, it'll be the biggest news. There's already rumblings of it. There's always big rumblings of it. Like, for instance, in California's CalPERS is $1 trillion underwater. I don't know how many thousands of California public servants are in trouble, but that's a lot of people. So this pension crisis, which way I wrote this book, Who Stole My Pension, was for you how to protect yourself from the looting that's been going on for years. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And today we're talking about the biggest train wreck in world history coming down the road. It's called pensions. All over the world, pensions will be crashing. Anyway, so we're going to have a very important show for you to listen to and what you can do to protect yourself. Anyway, you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes, Android, or on YouTube. And please leave us a review whenever you can. And also, all of our podcasts are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them because repetition is how we learn. So if you listen to this program again, even though you're not a Hollywood actor, you might find out why, the Hollywood actors might be in bigger trouble than you are. And maybe most importantly, what you can do. And once you listen to this program once or twice, have your friends, family, especially business associates listen to it, because this pension train wreck will affect everybody. There is nobody going to escape this one. Because, we were talking earlier about how 2008 came down. And, Kim and I are into real estate, but the biggest real estate crash is coming because there's a thing called CMBS, as collateralized mortgage-backed securities, which are bigger than the subprime crash. And the CMBSs are funding all these office buildings, shopping centers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And many of the pensions are filled with CMBSs. They're financing structures that are supposed to be returning, but they're going broke also. Any comments, Kim?
Yes, we've got two great guests today. One familiar face is Ted Seidel. He's a former attorney with the United States Security and Exchange Commission and an expert on pension looting. And Robert, your co-author on Who Stole My Pension. And great to have you back, Ted. And our other guest is Pete Antico. He's an actor, stuntman, macroeconomics scholar. And we're talking today about the pensions in Hollywood. Now, when I think of pensions in Hollywood, I think, what's the big deal? These actors, they make millions. Who's feeling sorry for them? Well, if I'm understanding it correctly, and we'll get into it, only about 15% of the actors actually make the big bucks. The other 85% do not. So it's a whole nother world, and we're going to get right back into it.
Yeah. So Ted, what does SAG stand for people who may not know?
Well, SAG is the Screen Actors Guild, and Pete Antico, who we have here, is I believe, a current board member of SAG. And so Pete can tell us a little about why is it that he contacted me, because actors in Hollywood are terribly concerned about their pensions, their pension benefits, and how the pension money is being invested. So Pete, maybe you can tell us a little about SAG.
And would you explain who makes up SAG as well, Pete?
It was the screen. It's now SAG-AFTRA because they merged, which wasn't a good thing financially. But the Screen Actors Guild, we always used to see the happy face, sad face. That was the performers, that was some voiceover artists, actors, singers, dancers, and puppeteers, stunt people. Those people are in front of the camera, or their work is in front of the camera.
And that's 160,000, you say?
Well, with the merger, it's since the merger, it's 160,000, and it's always duplicitous for them to say we're 160,000 members strong when they're lucky when 70 or 80,000 members don't make a dime.
Make nothing.
So and the 15% that you spoke of before, out of the 15% that earn a living, the big money, you're only talking maybe 3%. The people that make millions are a very, very, very small amount of the group. So most of the people that do commercials, commercials is also part of the Screen Actors Guild, or now SAG-AFTRA. Those people are great people. They're like the rank and file, salt of the earth. I love them. A lot of beautiful, creative people that just want to feed their families, get health care, like everybody else that works at a job anywhere. And when you look at what our pensions invested in, I was always concerned, and since 2009, I've been writing letters to the president of the plan and telling him to put 10% of the market rate of our assets into physical gold, because gold, in my opinion, is protection against inflation and inflation. And I was a serious student of Dow theory. I used to love Richard Russell. Rest in peace, Richard Russell was awesome. He used always used to say, well, he didn't like Keynesian economics, and he would always say you can't cure the problem of overlending and overspending with more of the same. That's a definition of insanity, because all it does is inflate currency.
So Pete, let me ask you a question. Did Hollywood shut down during COVID?
Yes.
So all the salaries stopped also, like everybody else.
Stopped, except for a few radio people and voiceover people, dead. Very
So,
little.
Ted, let's go macro. So now we're talking about SAG, Screen Actors Guild. And when you and I were working on Who Stole My Pension, the book, I mean, how pervasive is this thing about Wall Street exporting toxic assets all over the world? How pervasive is that? And how desperate are they now to get some kind of return as interest rates keep going down?
And is anybody's pension safe?
Great questions. But one of the most revealing news events in the world of pensions this week was in the New York Times. CalPERS, the largest pension in the United States,
That's California teachers.
Public Employees Retirement System, okay, is looking for a new chief investment officer. And mandatory requirement is that this guy or gal has to have experience with high risk assets, because, says the job opening, the pension has got to concentrate on high risk assets to meet its pension obligation. So this is in the ad and in the article in the New York Times this week.
Does it help if he's Chinese or she's Chinese?
Well, actually, the former one who resigned, I believe, was Chinese.
Yeah,
and
that's what I heard.
There was an issue of his having some ties to
Biden.
Chinese investments or whatever.
So CalPERS got in trouble because they were putting they're putting so much funds in these high risk assets. So their solution is to go more risky assets because they're looking for that Hail Mary.
Yeah, and need not apply if you don't have experience in high-risk gambling.
That is
Gamblers
crazy.
only.
Oh my goodness.
Gamblers Anonymous. This is gamblers only can apply.
Wow.
So
That's
Ted, the old metaphor is that the house of cards starts. When the first card goes, the whole thing comes down. So from your years of experiencing with the SEC and things like this, how big? I mean, when this house of cards called pensions, probably starting with CalPERS or something like that, or some other crash, how pervasive, how big is this house of cards?
Well, it's big enough. Think of it this way, Robert. CalPERS is counting on the house of cards to bail them out. So you want to know how big it is? It is the solution to the perceived problem. So if it's not the solution, it is the demise, right? I mean, if this is the solution that the best minds on Wall Street have cooked up for CalPERS and pensions around the world to save themselves, it's not going to work. It's going to be disastrous. They're going to be worse off after these toxic investments than they were before they ever met.
Well, I think Hunter Biden's looking for a job. He'd be pretty good at this. He has connections.
So back to, and I know you guys are just delving into the Hollywood pension, but Ted, what is there hope for this pension? Is there hope for any pension, I guess, is my question.
Well, there was a day when pensions were very conservative investors, very conservative fixed income investments, and the risky investments were just the tail of the dog, 5%, 10%. But nowadays, the equation is flipped, where there's 75, as much, 50, 60% high risk assets, and then another 20% equities, and the safe stuff is just very, very minority position. So they're all pensions around the world are gambling like crazy, and the dangers are there.
So, Pete, as a board member of SAG, what are you guys doing to make corrections?
Well, our group, it was called Membership First. Our group we voted up, we attempted to vote up raising the pension contribution caps that hadn't been raised in 38 years. So I recommended that if you want to follow the Fed's phony 2% a year inflation rate that doesn't factor in food or energy, I don't know how you run a rate of inflation without adding in food or energy. I figured, okay, let's use their rate. Let's use 2% a year. So I figured we should ask for 76%. So I went in and then we made a motion wanted to raise it by 100%. The other side, who's got more seats in the board, the opposition party, which controls the union, voted it down. Now, I stood up in front of all of them and said, how do you call yourselves unionists? The most important thing, the only reason to be in a union is pension and health and good wages and working conditions. If you destroy the pension and health, this union will implode. You'll just bust your own union. And it's like the politics in the country, Robert. It's like, if you like chocolate and I like vanilla, they vote against you no matter if it's common sense or factual. You show them the numbers. And I told them all, your pension's in imminent danger if you don't protect it. And none of them voted up to protect their pension. That's why I believe they should all be removed. And they're certainly not fulfilling a fiduciary duty to the membership. Because if the membership ever really knew the ins and outs, because nobody pays attention.
So Pete, is it a group of people that are investing the Hollywood pensions? Is it individuals?
They have money managers. We don't do. We have no say in it. It's the trustees on the plan side. And I wanted to ask you both. I know when the bond market tanks, right now 0% or negative interest rate policy and zero interest rate policy. When the bonds are paying virtually nothing, and no one's going to buy zero coupon bonds at par and valueless, they're worthless. So who's going to buy them? Why are they continuing to invest in bonds? And why in 2008, if their pension went down 20 or 21% and they said they were in the upper half part, why in 2020 did the pension not make an additional few $100% because the market went up? I mean,
well, the other thing too is that who's going to buy the bonds is the Fed and the Treasury.
Sure.
So they're desperately looking for anything to buy right now. But with that said, Ted, let me ask this question. It's a question we've been asked many times. What happens to like federal employees, like people who work for the military or federal government? Do they have pensions, or are they on the Treasury's asset financial statement?
Well, they do have, the military has a pension plan. We got into this on a talk radio show we did once for us. We had some questions about the military pensions. And I did a little research and found that David Stockman, remember him?
He's a good friend of ours.
What was he, finance director? Or?
Yeah,
under Reagan.
He was the budget director under Reagan.
Yeah.
Well, an interesting thing, you know why he's a good guy? His degree is in theology from Harvard, so he has some heart and soul left.
Yeah. Well, he dared to write a paper about the structure and management of the military pension fund, and he almost got his head ripped off. And I don't think anybody has dared touch it. I wrote a brief article about it in Forbes, and people screamed that how dare I even question military pensions. So there are military pensions, there are government pensions. They're different structures. There's some that are like 401ks, and some are like traditional pensions, but they are out there. But
are they under the same umbrella where Wall Street is looting them as well, or is it just more the non-government, non-federal government?
Less so in the case of the federal government pensions. The looting is really happening in corporate pensions and in governmental pensions. But one point Pete made just a minute ago, which is one of the things I found traveling around the country, is that unions, which back in the old days, were really focused on improving working conditions and pay issues and things. One of the things that the unions have not done in this country over the last 20 years is really grab onto the pension issue. They don't understand how pensions work. And most union members I know say to me, if my union's not out there watching over my pension, why am I paying dues? For what? I mean, we're not running sweatshops in America anymore. We're not worried about, safety conditions so much these days. The real issue that worries most American workers is retirement security. And
so this is the final question because we're out of time. You are the biggest whistleblower around. I'm sure you've got armed guards all around you. But anyway, how did you catch them with the pants down? What were they doing? Why would the CFC, the Commodities Futures Exchange and the SEC or somebody, who paid and why did they pay?
Well, the key issue in so many of these financial cases is the Wall Street firm, the investment firm, claims they're doing what's best for you. And of course they're not. There's always a secret backdoor kickback scheme because these firms are in business first and foremost to make money for themselves. If they make you money, great. If the market's up 10% and they pay you 2% and pocket 8%, that's everybody's happy in their mind. But so the key issue in whistleblowing cases involving Wall Street usually is conflicts of interest or how these firms are secretly profiting at the expense of their clients, transferring your wealth to them.
So who paid you then? I mean, who got caught with their pants down?
Well, the case I was involved with was JP Morgan. But they're all of the Wall Street firms pretty much follow the same business model, and you can see it in their financial results. If Goldman Sachs stock is up because the company made a lot of money, where do you think that money came from? Investors, right? That's where it comes from. So it's the business model of Wall Street, and in the long run, that is what gets them in trouble. And that's the whistleblower cases I've been rewarded on have been involving conflicts of interest and hidden payments, illegal payments, questions like that.
Well, didn't J.P. Morgan just pay a $1 billion fine for rigging the silver and gold COMEX market?
Since 2008. Since 2008 to 2016, that was the case. And no one went to jail. I wonder.
Yeah.
Well, nobody ever goes. The first
and
thing
what somebody said was, I think, let's say it's J.P. Morgan, I could be Morgan Stanley, whatever they were, paying $1 billion is like charging a donut shop for a donut. They just produce more donuts. It doesn't affect them at all. They make so much money. What the heck is one donut?
And Ted, you were going to say nobody ever goes to jail, right?
Nobody, three things. Nobody ever admits guilt, nobody ever goes to jail, and nobody ever pays all the money back. So those are three great reasons why crime always pays. Okay? Anybody who tells you crime doesn't pay doesn't know what they're talking about, at least not on Wall Street.
And that's how Joe Biden became a billionaire and the Clintons become billionaires and all this. They did it the old-fashioned way.
Well, the Clintons went from zero, I believe, to, weren't they near broke at the time they left office? And then what, 100 million now? I don't know what their net worth is today.
Yep.
Well, Biden's been in office at 40-something years, and they say he's at $1 billion now. But that's just hearsay. So but I wouldn't be surprised. And like Obama has 3 houses over $10 million each. And I've seen one of his houses in Hawaii. It's bigger than my house, I'll tell you that much.
You got a $100 million deal with Netflix.
There you go.
$100 million producing deal with Netflix.
Yeah. Anyway, you guys, it's an exciting time. That's why I suggest people get this book, Who Stole My Pension? How to Stop the Looting. Because as we speak right now, your pocket's being picked. So I want to thank Ted Siddell, my co-author of Who Stole My Pension, and Pete Antico. Keep up the good work.
Fighting,
keep the pressure.
Keep fighting, Pete.
So thanks, you guys.
I'd like to say, everybody, buy that book. Everybody in the Screen Actors Guild, AFTRA, buy this book. The book will inform you, will protect you. Please buy the book. Educate yourself. That's the best way to protect yourself.
Thank you, Pete. We appreciate it. That's why we did it. So
Great.
when we come back for the final word with Kim and myself and Sarah, we'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about your pensions, if you have one. And you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes, Android, or YouTube. Please leave a comment. And all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com because we don't sell anything except a few books. But anyway, go to Rich Dad Radio, listen to this program again, and your intelligence will go up because we need more intelligence today, more awareness. And then you can talk to your friends, family, and business associates, listen to this program, and you may come up with things you can do because, mark my words, pensions are going to be the biggest train wreck in world history because we have the biggest number of baby boomers who got nothing. So that's why, and as we talked about in the program, people stole it. Any comments, Kim?
Well, that's what Ted Seidel was saying when he gets these big cases. It's conflicts of interest and illegal behind the scenes deals that are going on, and that's what's causing all this. But I just, you go back to what we talked about earlier about Wall Street, and Wall Street sees this low hanging fruit. These pensions were being run responsibly. They were being run well. They were well funded. And then Wall Street just comes and say, oh, my gosh, look, we got all this low-hanging fruit, and these people don't know what they're doing, and we're just going to take all their money. So basically, Wall Street just screwed millions and millions of people out of their pensions.
All over the world.
All over the world.
Because what Ted was telling me when I first met him, he's a great guy. I mean, he's one of these, he's a fitness nut, man. That guy is always working out. He's in great health. But anyway, we traveled to New York to go do this book promotion. He introduced me to people who are very good people, and they're kind of telling us what they see from the inside of how the pensions are being looted. So I learned more probably after the book was printed, and to meet these, New York Times and Wall Street Journal journalists who are still legal, not corrupt, but they're like, holy mackerel, we have no idea how much they're stealing from us.
And then he talks about CalPERS. And CalPERS is looking for a new investment manager, and
risk.
and they have to have experience with high risk assets.
You must be either Chinese or
my gosh, because that's what got them in trouble was the high risk. So now they're going for higher risk because maybe that will save them. But
I think Hunter Biden's the best guy for them.
Oh gosh.
Access. Anyway, I mean, both our fathers,
yeah.
my father had pension troubles. My poor dad lost his job because he's an honest man in politics, and he took on the government, and they crushed him, and they took his pension from him.
Well, my dad actually had pensions, and that saved him. That's what saved him. Yeah.
My dad didn't.
Yeah, and so many of these people, and I feel like if we talk about Hollywood, as Pete said, a lot of these people only make $25,000 to $30,000 a year. That's all they're making. It's like they're counting on this pension, and it's not going to be there.
I think it's a lesson that we're seeing across the board is if you don't pay attention and if you rely on others to tell you what's happening with your money, you are susceptible to being looted. I mean, we've seen it across UPS. We've seen it across all these industries. And if you blindly turn your money or trust over to these money managers or fund managers, you have no idea what's happening.
Right. People don't know what's going on.
Right.
So anyway, excuse me. Please get this book, Who Stole My Pension, because it's going to be the biggest train wreck we've ever seen. So the more you know now, then you can take what we in the military call evasive action. You can do something, protect yourself from the biggest crash ever. Thank you for listening to the Rich Dad Radio program, and final words.
Thank you for listening. It's always eye-opening.
And thanks for Ted Seidel and Pete.
And Tico.
Bye.